Hi, I'm Mike Handwerker with Tricky Fast Studios. Today I'm going to show you about another NPC behavior. This time it's going to be merchants. Now, merchants actually work a little differently from the other behaviors. Instead of being a behavior, it's actually an interaction. By the end of this video, you should be able to set up an NPC as a merchant so that you can purchase items from them or sell items to them. You should also learn how to set up the merchant UI and how to set prices on items. To start off, I've created this level with assets from the Unity Asset Store. If you want to check them out, I'm going to add links to them in the description of the video. I've got a player set up here and also this goblin. Now the goblin's just set up to stand there and not do anything right now. So, the first thing we need to do is make sure we have an interaction manager, which we do. We've already added the interaction manager and set up a max distance for mouse interactions and an interact via mouse. And then under the conductor, we need to make sure we have an interaction service, which we do. The next thing we want to do is add an inventory manager to our merchant here. We also want to make sure that we have an inventory service set up, which we do. The next thing we want to do is add a merchant interaction. To our NPC. Now we can take a look at this quick. First, we do want to set an interaction type. So we're going to take our dialogue interaction. We're going to make a copy of that. I'm going to call it merchant. We're going to make it fire2, and everything else here. Oops, dialogue prefab. We want this to be the merchant indicator. So our merchant interaction here, we need to set the type. So we can obviously under interactions, we can always have conditions underneath it. That's what this evaluation requirement is. Same with animation and sound. Those are all default for interactions. Now we have some stuff. So we can set a buy discount. So if you want to allow your NPC merchant to buy back items from the player, you can set this to be the discount for that they'll buy them back at, and that's based on the item's price. We can also limit the quantity, and that means that basically whatever the merchant has in his inventory, that's all you can buy. So if he has one sword, you can buy one sword from him, and then you cannot buy anything else. You can set him to be a seller only, so that he doesn't buy items, and you can also set him so that he will sell any items that he does buy. And then we have a window prefab. So we want to set this up. So we'll use this merchant UI from the complete game example. And then the window parent, we want to set that to land on the canvas. So now we can open up this window. The next thing we need to do is we do want to make sure the player has inventory, which the player does not. So we need to add an inventory manager to the player. Let's make sure we got auto expand bag, auto stack stackables. Sounds good to me. This goblin on his inventory manager, let's do the same thing. And we'll also add an equip slot. And under this equip slot, so this is how we're going to add items for the merchant to sell. So under the equip slot, we want to add let's see, a health potion. Actually, you know what? We'll add this was Bob's sword. This is from the complete example game. Now this is an item that's already set up. We've covered how to deal with items in a previous video and how to create them. So we're not going to go over that now. So he should have Bob's sword that's available for sale. One thing you'll notice is that there's a component on here called price. So you can just add that using the add component. Yep. You could add that component to it. And it takes a bunch of different amounts. And you can set the currency name and the amount. So the other thing we want to make sure is that we have a virtual currency service, which we do not. So let's add that. And since we're talking about gold there, we need to make sure we add the currency for gold. Okay. Back to our sword here. So this sword's going to cost 150 gold. Player's not going to have that. So let's do this. The player has a triggered action where they can hit fire 2, which is the right mouse button, I believe, and then it does their healing. So we're going to add another thing to here to grant virtual currency. So whenever we heal, for whatever reason, we also get some gold, and we'll get 200. The target is the owner. All right. So now we can get ourselves some gold. Let's also, while we're at it, just make sure we know how much gold that we have. And over here, under our canvas, let's add a virtual currency amount data bind. Where's our canvas? All right, so let's put it middle center. Let's do top center. Actually, take that back. Let's do top left. Put it there. Down a little bit. Just make sure that's going to show up. Let's go a little bit further down. There we go. So we can do prefix. Just do gold. Currency name gold. Now it's going to show us how much money we have. And just want to make sure in our interaction here for merchant, fire 2, actually we really don't want that to be fire 2. Let's make that fire 1. And on the player, we need to disable their attack action for now because that also uses fire 1. One other thing I want to disable on here, yeah, let's just disable this. This is just hiding the cursor. One thing we do want to change is this grant virtual currency action. We want to set that to none, not to player. One last thing we need to do over here is in the inventory service, we need to add this item. Any item that you want to be able to buy needs to either be in a prefab, which we're not using right now, or in the list of available items on the inventory service. So we'll just add Bob's sword over here. Now we should be able to buy Bob's sword. Let's come down here. And there's our guy. Click on him, brings up the inventory UI. Let's try and buy that. Oh, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Oh, we have 0 gold. So if you remember, I set up the healing ability, the trigger for that, to also grant some currency. So if I heal, you can see we've gone up to 200 gold. We also healed, which is a nice bonus. So now we can open up the shop window again. We can take a look at this. We can move this over to the sell side, or move this over here. We've bought it. Now we have a Bob sword. If you look at, we now have 50 gold left because we just bought it. And then the other thing is we could sell it back. Now we sold it back. We still have 50 gold because, if you remember, on our merchant interaction, we set the buy discount to 0, so that means it's a percentage, so it's 0% of the price. So let's set this to be 90% of the price. And give that a try again. Come over to this guy. Oh, we need to do our ability first so we can get some gold. So we get 200 gold. We buy it. We got 50 gold. We sell it back. Now we got 185. So we got 90% of our gold back. The next option we can try out here is to limit quantity. Let's go over here on Bob's sword. Set the count to be 2. And let's give this a go. So we're going to need some extra money here. So let's do the get money ability once. And then we're going to do it again over here. Alright, now we got 400 gold. That's plenty of money. So let's do this. Look, he's got 2 of them. So now we buy that. And now he's only got 1. And we've got 1. Now we can buy this. And now we've got 2. They don't stack for us. And he's got none. There's nothing we can buy from him. So if we sell 1 back, there's still nothing we can buy from him. Now if you remember, there was another option on the interaction for sell bought items. So if we click that, what will happen is that we can buy a sword from him and sell it back to him, and then he'll sell it back to us, and so on. So let's get some money here. Okay, now click on this guy, buy 1 sword, buy 2 swords. He's got nothing. Let's sell him a sword back. And now he's got a sword he can sell us. Let's see if we can afford that. Oh, we can. And now we can sell it back. And we can sell this one back. And now he's got 2. So you may be wondering how this whole window works. And there's a couple different pieces to it. So let's go. Let's actually just add this to our canvas. 2D mode. Take a look at it. Oops. There we go. So this window is a little bit more complicated than you actually need. It has 2 ways of buying. One of them is to select the item and then hit the buy button, and that's where this value holder with a selection value on it comes in. The other way is to just drag and drop from one to the other. So in our layout here, we have a buy side and a sell side. And those have a scroll area. And a viewport. Usual stuff. And then a list. And so this is on the buy side. The list here, we want to show a UI layout group data bind. bind to the owner, which is the merchant's, bindable items. And then we have this item for sale prefab. Let's take a look at that quickly. So if I add one of those under there, so it's a state machine with a button trigger on it. It's actually, the whole thing is a button. It's got an icon, so this gets bound to the inventory item. So it's got a UI image data bind that binds to the icon. It's got a label here that binds to the name of the item. It's got a UI button triggered action. And when that happens, it's going to set the selection that we saw, that value on the merchant UI, and it sets it to the owner. And then we're going to enable the buy button and disable the sell button at the bottom. So then we have a quantity, which is just a regular integer text data bind that points to owner's count. And then a price, which has an image and a text. And on the price here, it has a UI price data bind, and it points to the image and the text, the currency name to use, and then it picks up the price off of the price component on the item. Finally, to handle the drag and drop, we have this drag and drop action pointed to the owner. We clear the parent on the drag so it gets removed, and then we reset it on an unsuccessful drop. And then this stop action here gets run whenever you drop it. And it's only if it's an unsuccessful drop, I believe. Yes, if it's an unsuccessful drop, it puts it back in the buy viewport. Now back to the main window here. We have a triggered action with a drag and drop trigger on the buy side. So whenever you drop something on the buy side, it is going to, it's targeting the scroll, which is this guy here. So that's the area. This is the area right here. And we have a condition under it. So with the drag and drop stuff, you can have a condition on the drag and drop trigger that lets you decide whether you want to accept something that's been dropped. So we get the owner of the item. So this is something, so the targeted here, that's going to refer to the item that was dropped, which is the inventory item. And then we're looking at this owner attribute, which returns whoever owns it. We want to see if that's the player. So if it's the player, then we're going to allow this. And when we allow it, we sell item to merchant. So this takes a target, where the item comes from, a merchant, where the item goes to, what the item is, which is going to be targeted. That's going to be from the drag and drop trigger. We could play a sound when you do sell it. And since that sound option wasn't there when this was built, we just manually have it play a sound. Now the other side of the window looks very similar. It's got the same viewport with the list of items. It would have the same item. Actually, it would have an item to buy. Item for sale, item to sell would be under here, I think. Yes. So if we look at this, it's not really much different, right? So we have the same data binding. We have a trigger action here. When you click on it as a button, same thing. It's going to set the selection to that. It's going to enable disable the buy button, enable the sell button, because remember this is on the sell side. And then there's a quantity data bind and a price data bind. And again, we have this drag and drop action with the clear parent on drag and the reset on unsuccessful drop. And then our stop action here for when there's an unsuccessful drop is to put it back in the cell list. Now, again, we have a triggered action for the drag and drop trigger on this side. Over here, so this is if you've dragged a sellable item over. So we have two conditions under this drag and drop trigger. The other one only had one. So one of them is whether we can afford to buy that. And then the other one is whether, again, we're checking targeted's owner to see if it's the player, but this time we're negating it because we want to make sure that this is owned by the merchant. So when you drag it over there, if both of those conditions are true, we're going to run this buy item from merchant action. And again, we have a target, which is the player, and a merchant who we're going to be buying from, which is the owner. And then the item is the target, which is going to be set by this drag and drop trigger to whatever was dropped. We could have added a sound there. We just added it manually. And that's how the drag and drop side of things work. Now we do have a close button here. And then on the bottom, if we enable that, so when you actually click one of these as a button and it sets the selection, we are going to data bind this bottom section to that selection. And then we have a UI image data bind to show the icon, a text data bind to show the name of the item, description, we show the price again, and then we have a buy button. And if you remember, depending on which side you select something from, it will either enable or disable this buy button. So buy button has a UI button trigger, obviously. And then again, we have this buy item for merchant action. And for the merchant here, we don't really know who that's going to be at this point. So what we need to do is look at the merchant UI's data binding. So we have use binding, and we're using that because that's bound to the merchant. The item is going to be the owner, whatever, but we're also looking again at the data binding. So that's the what we've bound to here, which is, if you remember, it's the selection. We could have played a sound there, but instead we have a separate action for that. And then the sell button is pretty similar. It's got a triggered action and a sell item to merchant. Again, we get the merchant off of the merchant UI layouts data binding. The item is from owner, but the data binding. We could have played a sound, but again, we had just this manual sound playing. And then finally, we have this triggered action here to show or hide this bottom section here. And we do that via this game object value trigger, whether the selection value is none or not. And so as a regular action, we are going to, if it is none, we're going to disable the bottom. Otherwise, we enable it. That's really it. That's all there is to the merchant UI. I know it's a little bit complicated. You can see the example that's in the complete game example. That's probably the best place to look. In this video, you should have learned how to have an NPC be a merchant, add items to their inventory so that they can sell them, allow the player to sell things back to them, and to set the various options on the merchant interaction. Additionally, you should have learned how to set up the UI for a merchant in terms of listing the items they have for sale, allowing them to buy them either via drag and drop or by clicking on a button, and also how to add a price to an item. I hope you found this video informative and useful. Let us know in the comments if there are other videos or tutorials you'd like to see. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media for the latest videos and other news. For more information on Cat or Cat RPG Builder and how they can help you build and prototype RPGs faster, please visit catgamebuilder.com. I'm Mike Handberger with Tricky Fast Studios. Thanks for watching.